Hey there, everyone. I hope you are all doing good. Today, we are going to talk about spectral processors and more precisely about Buchla-inspired spectral processors. I'm going to compare this guy, which is the one that I own, the Buchla and Tiptop 296T, which happens to be the most, let's say, faithful recreation of the actual 296 by Buchla. And those three other modules are also based on the exact same concept, but with modernized and extended feature set. I just wanted to thank Frap for sending this just for the occasion of this video, and Alex for sending this demo park filter. So here are the four models that we are going to compare. Fumana by Frap, the Spectral Processor by Sputnik Modular, and the bark filter by Verbos electronics. Before we get into it, even though I've made a few videos on this one already, let me give you a brief introduction on what this does. A spectral processor is, to the eyes of most, a sort of giant and very expensive graphic equalizer. You plug a signal into it, and from there it is splitted between 16 filters, a low pass, 14 band pass, and one high pass, each at fixed frequency. These sliders represent the volume of each filter going to the output. So right now, this is why we don't hear anything, because we have everything at minimum. Big bass. Just a tiny, really weird rattle. And some squishy little... As you can hear, this doesn't sound like a normal graphic EQ at all. Those are very steep bandpass filter, so you get only a very tiny amount of frequency into each of them. And actually, if we compare the dry sound, you can hear that there is a drastic difference. You can hear the comb, you can hear the hole in the spectrum. But this is a good thing because it allows you to create very unnatural sound. Okay, this is the basic part. And there's also this set of output that's called programmed. And these are actually another set of output that's completely independent from what you do with the sliders. And this one are expecting control voltage. Which means you can control any bands individually. Or stack one control to multiple tiny bands. But there are also program controls which are width, which will open multiple bands at the same time around the center frequency. So I suggest you go check the other videos I did on this instead of rambling again about what this does. all these other modules work basically on the same concept. But there are differences between all of them. And this is what we are going to try to check in this video. So, first of all, let's try to hear them one by one. I have a saw wave from this gravidade oscillator going to all the inputs of all the different filters. And I have each of them on separate channels on the mixer, so we can compare. As you can see on each of them, I am using an output that I can draw the curve with as graphic equalizer. This is the 296T. I have a tiny bit of spring reverb just to make an ambience. This is the Fumana. Very, very, very different. The Sputnik. Not so different. The Bach processor. Different, but... Okay, so the first thing that we can see is that clearly the Fumana has a completely different sound. Those treats less clear. Let's listen again. So, one of the differences is that I feel that it seems that this one is the most steep of the three. The steeper of all, this is why it sounds so different, is the Fumana. Also, one interesting thing. The Sputnik does go above 0. And I've stayed at the maximum is 0. But I could boost. So if I try to match visually what's happening here with him, I have a much more loud sound, and I can feel the resonance of the different bandpass filter more. But the Bach filter has less band actually, and so they are a little bit broader, and it also sounds a little bit more saturated, which is normal for Verbos stuff. And also, here you can see I'm on the maximum on the output, but on these I'm far from at the maximum. You can crank up the input much more on these two, and on the Fumana as well. To match approximately the level, I need to be at noon here on the Fumana. Okay, so this was trying to have the same curve on the fader. This is why this Fumana is so different, is because it's not using the same band at all. The frequency are very, very different. And one thing that makes it very special is that the two low bands are very, very low. We have 15 Hz and 65 Hz. Well, here we have only a low pass that's filtering everything above 100. Means that we have a very precise control over what's happening in the low end on the Fumana that we don't have on any of the others. That's a good point for him, I guess. It also makes it a bit more complex. One of the other things I want to try, I'm going to put down all the faders. So I'm going to start that SQ1 just to use it to trigger an envelope here of this 281 clone. And I'm going to use it to open the width control on each of these different machines, and we'll see how it reacts. So first, on the 296, I need to take the program output here if I want to hear what's happening with those control voltages. Because here we have a completely different signal path, with the attenuator output being only what you do on the fader and the programmed output being only what you do with the control voltages. Let's try to find the moment where it's opening, where we still have a lot of bass, but also a bit of crisp. Which is around here, opening the width at max. Let's do the same thing with the Fumana. What's interesting with the Fumana is that I can really control the range. Easier to get the whole spectrum here. And here. Okay, now let's take this one. Let's control the width. We also need to take the programmed output. Let's take the all. And so this is one of the weird things with this one compared to the 296T. Actually, I thought it was broken when I first tried it, because it's one where when you are using the programmed output, the faders are actually the maximum level that can be outputted by each band. So if you have all the faders down and that you're using this output, you just get no sound. And this is quite interesting with envelopes like this, because you can have just one envelope that will control the dynamic of each band, and you can dial this by hand, which is, I think it's the only one that can do that so easily. Try with everything at 0 dB. Very different. This does really open the full spectrum as well. Let's try the bark now. The bark does have a very different curve, in a very different way to handle CV. As you can hear, we don't have the same decay at all. It's actually maybe exponential. It does feel more percussive. Once again, let's compare with the 296T. One thing that might seem obvious now that you've seen all of them is that one thing that this one lacks, and that I feel is one thing that I would like to have on it, is the LEDs to show you what's happening. Sometimes with this one, it's a bit hard to find which envelope follower to use, for example, with a drum machine or something to trigger stuff. It's also fun because you have to search for it, and you stumble upon some stuff that you have not expected while you look for it, instead of being like, okay, this is here, let's grab this. But it's also way more convenient that way. So these two do not have the same paradigm of the equalizer kind of output, like with the attenuators and the programmed out. Everything is summed on the Bach filter and the Fumana, so you can use the program section kind of thing where you control and move everything inside all the banks and have the feather at the same time. One thing that could be interesting now would be to have a sequence running on the oscillator so we can see all the bands interact on each of these different devices. The bass. This guy is insane. This is something I feel with this one, since I've been trying it with the Fumana, which is one of the little thing that bothers me with it, is that there's some sort of a step between the different bands in amplitude. More than with the others. But it's it's a very small thing. One of the cool things with this guy also is that we see where we have things. I think this one also, this is why there's a long portion we don't hear much. It's because it might be expecting 5 volts to open fully its different controls. While this is sending 10 because most of these modules are asking for 10 volts. The Bach does have like a lot of Verbos stuff. The range of the knobs are quite weird. You go from nothing to suddenly a lot, and then it becomes very smooth, and that's weird. Apart from that, it does sound very good. It does that kind of steppy things too, like the Fumana. Some sort of little weirdness in there. Let's try it audio right now. This is one of the synth patch that I love to do with the spectral processors. Audio rate control of the center and opening manually or with CV the width gives you that very... This is good. More stuff to play with here. Definitely sounds very good. The tilt does come in handy with this kind of sound, which we miss on the original 296T. It sounds less good with this one, but also it can become quite interesting to curve it, which you can't do with the others. Then it can sound quite good. Here again, the tilt does come in quite handy. This kind of modules are capable of vocoding effects. What you need to do for this is use the even and odd inputs. You send a vocals, for example. I've made a loop of my voice saying something stupid about vocoding, which is going here in the even out. And I have the saw wave from the oscillator here going to the odd out. And I've sent the transfer knob here to the top. So here we have nothing. Here I have classic saw wave vocoding sounds.
We are going to try.
This is also interesting. It's the vocoding, but the other way around.
We are going,
which is not something so typical.
Stuff with those modules. We are going.
But it does some very interesting stuff when you modulate the frequency of the oscillator. Let me show you that.
Those modules. We are going to try vocoding stuff with those modules. We are going to try vocoding stuff with those modules. We are going to try vocoding stuff with those modules.
It's fun like this.
Are going to try
Okay, so let's try with the other modules.
Going to
So we can hear that it doesn't sound the same at all. And there's one thing where, now that I have tried all these three others, that I regret that it's not there on the 296T, is proper preamp on the input. Because yeah, the volume of the voice, I had to preamplify it before sending it here. Well, here I will always have to turn it down on all the other modules. So odd is the amp for the saw wave in this case. And this is the amplifier for the voice. Yeah, pretty different. Very, very different. But there's also something I forgot to show here, which is the envelope follower, which very changed the way things work. Here we are in the long mode. And we have the combo mode. Here we are in short. But the difference is because we have much more gain here, so we have more envelope going on. So yeah, pretty different. Even now with this one, it's even more different. Also because we have a knob to control the envelope follower time instead of a switch. But it does also have that sort of buzzy things in the background, like this one had, which this one doesn't have. Of course, this one's going to be less precise than the others because it has less bands. This one can have very long envelopes, which is interesting. This kind of thing, we could take only one band as well, instead of the all output. I mean, only the odd band controlled by the envelope of the even input. Okay, here we go for something different, because this one is the best at this game, for a simple reason. With all these, we add that division between odd and even band, and we could use either the odd or the even bands, envelope followers, to control the other side. In the Fumana, we have 16 bandpass filter that we can use, but there is 16 other bandpass filter that are not listenable, but they are just here to analyze one input. So you have proper 16 band vocoding. Here is how it sounds with the Fumana. it's clearly the most... It is clearly the most precise. Oh. Here is how it sounds with the Fumana. It is clearly the most precise of all. No surprise there. If you want the full band without any perturbation, make sure to have those two at 0. Because they will alter what's outputting of the main output. Then something you can do with all these models is to use some of the strong envelope followers to open some of the less strong bands. Which is fun. There is even an unvoiced input on the Fumana that will take a signal and let it pass only through some of the high bands. I think it's 14 and 15. I've had some fun using the square wave of the same oscillator here. One of the classic is noise, but... Yeah, that's fun. And quite subtle, as noise is a bit too much, I think. So yeah, Fumana with its input level for each odd and even on both the main in and the mod in, plus the addition of control of the attack of the envelope followers and the decay of the envelope followers, make it quite a beast. It's very specialized at this particular game of spectral transfer. I wanted to show that using the odd and even bands input, if you flip this around, we'll drastically change the sound because you won't use the same bands. Basically, the odd is going to be the most bassy because it has the low-pass filter, and the even is going to be the most precise because it has the high-pass filter.
We are going to try vocoding stuff with those modules.
Which is important. I think everyone who's been to this channel at least once will know that I have a problem with breakbeats and that I like to make weird things with them. So let's vocode some breakbeats. Here is how it sounds with the 296T. And the other way around as well. It's important. I have lots of fun doing that switch. Okay, let's go for the Fumana. Let's remove some reverb as well. Let's hear it again without reverb. So I cannot do the switching here, it's on the cable. So this is, again, a very different thing. But hell, this is much more precise. This is pretty good. So because I really like the sound of the Bach filter, but the envelopes are never snappy enough. But at the minimum, I feel that, yeah, I would like something more snappy for drums. On this side, on the other end, it's really nice. Fun stuff. Okay, so here we go now for the last part of this shootout, which is basically, I've set up the same patch everywhere, which is an envelope being modulated, simple decay envelope, and a sequence from the SQ1. The SQ1 controlling the center frequency and the envelope controlling the width parameter. This is how it sounds like on the 296T. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of delay and reverb for ambience. This is the Sputnik. This is the Bach filter. And this is the Fumana. Easy to hear the differences. Just in order to make sure that we are not falling short on this one, I'm going to attenuate those voltages. It is now much closer. There's a bit more of a raspy sound. Bach filter. The nastiest of all. Fumana, cleanest of all, to my ears. It is less muffled than the 296T. Maybe if I attenuate it a little bit on the module, the controls as well. Let's see how it goes. It has a greater range actually, so it's easy to make it brighter than this. So, in my opinion, there's none that's actually better than the other. They are all extremely nice modules. Pretty insane what you can do with all these things. And I'd say, I will make a few awards. For me, the interface award is the 296T. Well, the thing that I don't like about it is that it doesn't have as much gain at the input, which I regret a little bit now that I've tried all the others. The Fumana is definitely the most feature-packed of all, where you can have the 16 separate analysis input with attack and decay. I mean, the unvoiced input to enhance the vocoding part of it. It's crazy. It's really like the most feature-packed and the most intense. It's also maybe what makes it a bit harder to use than all the others. But it's absolutely insane. The Sputnik does sound a bit more nasty than this one, which can be something that I would like. And what's great about it, its main big feature that I think it's awesome, is the fact that the program out take in account the positions of the sliders, which is very cool. The Bach filter, I think, is the easiest to handle of all and the most brutal sounding, which is also something that you might want. I mean, it's very subjective, all this, but it's awesome. It really sounds great when you saturate the input. The only thing I really don't like about it is the envelope followers, actually. There, I find that the control, the shorter time is really not short enough for me, now that I've tried this one. And I guess that's it. Spectral processors are awesome. And I think if you like very weird sound design, you should probably get one. Maybe this video has been helpful in order to choose between those 4 options. Maybe it's not, maybe it's very confusing. I hope not. But anyway, this was fun to do. It was a hell of a task. I hope this is not too much of a letdown to anyone waiting for this, because I've been teasing it a little bit about it. But I mean, it was hard to work on it, but it was fun at the same time. If someone had told me one day that I would have those 4 on the same table at my house, I would have probably not believed it. As always, there will be some samples out of this session on my Patreon, so feel free to go check it out if you're interested in grabbing lots of samples. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.